welcome everyone, calling this Reinvestment Task Force meeting to order at 1:01 p.m. And at this time, I will call out names to see who is here. So I am here. Joel Anderson is absent. Chi Elder.
Present.
Thank you. Ali Tazi. Okay. Frank Robinson.
Here.
Raquette Uel. We see you are here.
I'm here. Sorry. I left for a second, not of my own volition.
It's totally fine. It's okay. Antonio Barbosa. Okay. Elizabeth Chow.
Hi.
Hi. You're here. Kira Green is not here. Mitch Thompson. Thank you, Mitch. Ricardo Flores. Is he here yet? Should be joining us real soon. I see Ali has joined us as well. Adolfo Ventura, here. Stephen Russell.
Present.
Thank you. And Peter Armstrong.
Present.
Thank you, everyone who is here at this time. We're going to go to item number 2, and we're going to move to non-agenda public comment. Is there any non-agenda public comment at this time?
There is no comment at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. And so the next is going to be task force member comments. I just want to invite any of our members, if you have any updates for us at this time, now is the time to let us know. I'm actually going to use the raise your hand function. So anyone who has a comment, please raise your hand. So let's go with Mitch first. Then we'll go with Elizabeth and then Stephen.
Thank you, Council Member. I just wanted to remind everyone that the application for the City of San Diego Business Relief Fund needs to be submitted by September 24th. There's a lot of opportunity to get assistance. I'm going to throw it in the chat, all the different ways that people can apply for this really simple application where they can receive a really helpful grant for them. So I'm going to throw that all in the chat so people can do it in about 7 different languages. So those links will be available. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch. We are not using chat since this is a public meeting. Is there a website URL you can direct people to? And if you could send it to me, I'll post it on the RTF website too.
Perfect. Sorry about that. Yes, please, sdreliefgrant.com. You can apply to get one-on-one business counseling. And then, yeah, I'll send it over with you, Daisy. Thank you.
Thank you. A note for everyone. I know sometimes I forget as well. Let's go over to Elizabeth.
Yes. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I just wanted to mention that we have an upcoming, and I was going to share the same information as Mitch. So thank you so much for getting that out there to people as a resource. But we have a workshop coming up on the 23rd, which is this coming Thursday at 10 a.m. And it is about financing for small business for options. And the SBDC will be present as well in that workshop, talking about the grant application. And then we'll also be talking about how to prepare for a loan application if small businesses need that. So more information, if you go on to accessity.org, which is our website, under the events, you'll see that. And then Daisy, I will also send you the direct registration link so that you can put it on the RTF website. And then I just wanted to share in the past year, 18 months, we had administered the county in partnership with the county and the San Diego Foundation, the Small Business Relief Loan Fund. And I did report, I think in a previous meeting, that all of those funds were dispersed. It was a $5 million fund at 1%. And I just wanted to give this group an update that many of those small businesses have started paying back their loan because they did have a period of time in which they didn't have payments. And so that's all being repaid and repaid back to the county. So I just wanted to give folks an update on that. So that's exciting to see. So thank you.
Thank you. Stephen.
Yes, good afternoon, council member and members of the committee here. I just wanted to let you remind you that the San Diego Housing Federation will be holding its annual conference on October 19th, 20th, and 21st. We'll include keynote speakers Mark Dones, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Kings County Homeless Continuum of Care. We also will have a lunch keynote by Dr. Akila Weber. And panels that include topics such as diversity, equity, and inclusion in construction, and a number of education and the fundamentals of affordable housing, which we highly recommend. If anybody here has staff in the government agencies that would like to attend, we can talk to you about. We have some scholarships available. And I think it's very important that folks understand some of the fundamentals, especially as they begin to wade into making more policy decisions in this area. So again, the conference will be October 19th, 20th, and 21st, and housingsandiego.org has all the information. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. And I see no other hands raised, so we will move to item number 4. And at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes for our June 24th meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, T. Do I hear a second?
Second, this is Frank Robinson.
Thank you, Frank Robinson. So we do have a motion and a second on the floor. If there's no discussion, we can go ahead and take a vote. Do I need to do roll call for the vote, or can we do a voice vote? We can do, okay.
A voice vote is fine, as long as you ask for, also ask for ayes, nays, abstentions.
Okay, sounds good.
We'll watch the lips move.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 And any opposed? Great, thank you. That passes unanimously. So let us move on to item number 5, and this is a staff report.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Daisy Crumpton. I am staff manager to the Reinvestment Task Force at the San Diego Housing Commission. 4 things today. One, Steve is always gracious, and he either modestly doesn't want to share his and Chi's new appointment, or is giving me a chance to talk about, if you didn't see it, the mayor announced a middle income housing work group. We are excited about that this is being given study, but also to have sort of direct representation for the RTF on it. Congratulations to Chi and to Steve on this. We hope that you will count on us if there's anything that we can help with, and that you will help us stay informed about this process and what's happening. We will see how it goes. Is there anything you guys would like to add? Oh, all right. Also in collaborations, Ricardo and Lisk have been leading a bank on effort. I wasn't able to make the meeting. I'm wondering, Ricardo or Ali, if you were there, if anyone has an update on this coalition. I was really impressed with the agenda, the breadth of the coalition, all the groups that are involved, and the specific tasks that you're moving forward on.
Yeah, I can do a quick update. Thank you. So what we did at our last meeting is we've decided on some committees, a steering committee, kind of a fundraising funding committee, and a volunteer committee as well. And then the other thing is we've created a logo that we agreed on. And a lot of the support that we're getting is from a particular group that the FDIC has turned us on to. Name escapes me right now, but they're very helpful to us. And they're also going to help us put together a website, which we will add based upon now the steering committee. And then we are also starting to go after grants. So the first grant we're going to go after is, I think it's about $5,000. Again, it's that same group that I don't have the name off the top of my tongue right now, but we're going to go after that. And then our goal is to, at the beginning of the year, to go after a larger grant, a matching grant with some of our partners on there. And that could be up to, I think, $40,000. And Lisk will hold the money for right now, but at some point, if we want to think about creating a nonprofit or some other kind of way of doing that, that's also a positive thing to think about. And really the goal here is to kind of we've talked a little bit about it, is the FDIC provides us a lot of good information, as everyone knows, about some of the challenges of different groups in terms of banking. And so the goal is to really look at those numbers and then to put together a plan. And we also had a media partner, Univision, that was on there. We've invited Catholic Charities and the Catholic Church on there because District 8 had identified, their chief of staff attended the last meeting and is still interested interested. They've identified that in some of their communities, they're losing banking services. And so how we communicate that at kind of a broader sense, and then hold ourselves accountable by additional measurements. So if anybody's interested in joining, we'd love to have you. Again, these are very common coalitions. LA has one. It's housed actually by their county. And the FDIC really came to us and said, hey, would you be willing to do this and get people together? And that's kind of what we're doing. So.
Great. Thank you, Ricardo. And thank you for taking the lead on this. Something that has been, we've all been aware of it. There hasn't been momentum to do it, but we know how much it is needed and are here to help, and glad to have so many of our members also be members of this collaboration. So this is great. Is there a next meeting or a time frame for next meeting?
Yeah, so what we're going to do is I have to get the information out to our banking partners, but what we're going to do, to our banking partners, to our the coalition members, but what we're going to do is each individual committee is going to have meetings,
Okay.
And then we're going to kind of decide from there how we structure a larger meeting going forward. So if you're interested, I would just say email me and I can kind of plug you in. Okay,
perfect. Thank you. And I can help connect people to it too if you want, just because my email is on the agenda. All right, so back to the RTF, our annual survey of the local banks reinvestment activity. We are preparing that report, and that will, as it traditionally is, be delivered at the last meeting of the year, which this year is October 21st for the RTF. So we'll see that then. Going to sort of like national news, just announcements in case anyone had missed them. One, I love seeing the news that Fannie Mae is going to try to find a somewhat convoluted, but a way to start looking at regular rent payments when mortgages are evaluated by lenders. This will really help out people who have a thinner credit rating. But of course, the ultimate goal is to have those rent payments reported to the credit reporting agencies. So it's really much more seamless. And that's something that there's, nothing that can really be, nothing to announce yet, but I think you just hear about lots of movements and, different apartment groups and credit groups and online platforms are looking at ways to do this. And that'll really be a leap forward, because right now, so many of the regular credit payments that people make, when your rent is like the first thing that you pay, right? Pay your rent first, is not reported to the credit agencies. So you might have a perfect record there, and it's on housing. We're talking about mortgages. So I'm hopeful that, even in the next 24 months, that this is something that might just become routine. We're not talking about it anymore. So that, I was excited to see that. Also in national news, Community Reinvestment Act reform has been a big issue for all of us in our work, and for the RTF, we put in comment letters when the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency went out on its own to change the way it was going to regulate big banks and measure their CRA performance. And with a change in administration, which includes Office of the Comptroller of the Currency and the Treasury Department, this summer, the Biden administration said, we are going to reverse these rules. Everybody seems unhappy with it, both the community activists, but also the banks who had requirements that were hard for them to implement in terms of data reporting and things like that, not just on the CRA side. And so if you recall, we did put in a comment letter early in the process. The Federal Reserve has put forth a new proposal that is much different, more friendly to CRA, a little bit easier to understand in a lot of ways. We put that letter in February, signed by our co-chairs. They are now putting together a new rule. I don't know when that will come out, but that'll be another, when it does, it'll be an opportunity for all of us to weigh in again. But also, one of the hopes when the Federal Reserve went in on this process was that the three different regulators that regulate the banks would come back in on a unified CRA, which is how it always was before. And so now it really looks like we're going to be able to move towards that, which is very good news. There I see, so that's the end of my staff report. I see a hand raised. I presume that we have public comment on the staff report since it's an item 2. It's not something that we've ever done before, but Madam Chair, there is a request for public comment on the staff report.
Okay.
Well, a hand that was raised, right, Polly?
And just as a reminder, in order to provide public comment, Attendees may use the raise hand feature located on the toolbar at the bottom of the Zoom window, and then make their comment when called on by the clerk and unmuting themselves when prompted. We have a comment from Natalie Newson. Natalie, you may unmute yourself and begin your comment. You have 3 minutes to speak.
First of all, I apologize if I didn't ask the question at the right time, but they were talking about CRA, and I wanted to know how we can obtain more information regarding CRA and who are the contact persons or the email addresses of the contact persons for each bank represented here. And I'm asking on behalf of nonprofits and for when I do lectures for UC Davis to inform them of the great work we're doing. I always try to represent San Diego well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Newson. We will note that. I'll look at the recording for your questions, but perhaps if you could reach out directly to me on email. My email is daisyc, DAISYC, @SDHC for San Diego Housing Commission.org. And I'm happy to start a dialogue and help however I can.
Thank you, Daisy. I want to turn it over to any members of the task force to see if you have any questions or comments at this time. Doesn't look like it. Okay, great. Thank you again, Daisy. Congratulations, T and Steve, for your appointment to the mayor's working group. I know that you all will do excellent work there. So thank you very much. And at this time, we're going to move to item number 6. Excited about this item. We have Jacqueline Butts, the Homeownership Program Director at Portland Housing Center, joining us today. She'll walk us through culturally and racially specific financial education class, and the successes of customized curriculums and incorporating the client's norms and practices around money. So, Jacqueline, I see you here. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to do a share screen, and hopefully it'll work, because and if not, I'll just get someone to come back and help me. So please bear with me. I think I have to figure out a way to do it.
No problem.
Yeah, so I want to keep the visual so I could see folks at the same time. So I'm just going to do a little crop in on my course. Okay, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes,
all right,
we can.
Wonderful. Okay, so thank you for having me. It's my honor to speak with you. And today what I want to do is make the argument and share the argument for culturally specific financial education. And so just a quick introduction. It is not, hold on a second. It's not working. Give me 1 second. I may have to do a different screen share. My name is Jackie Butts. I am the former Homeownership Program Director at Portland Housing Center, and I am currently have my own company called Some Clarity LLC. Forgive me, I'm trying to navigate, and the screen is not working. It's not cooperating with me. Please. I'm not quite sure why it's not letting me do my share properly. Geez, okay, I'm sorry. Let me try and figure this out. I'm going to stop my share. For some reason it's just not popping up. Would
okay,
someone
take your time? It's okay. We can get it right.
Okay. For some reason my mouse is not showing up so that I could do the share. And I'm not quite sure why that is. So let me do this. I'm going to come back out and try it a different way.
Jackie, this is Daisy. If you wanted to email it to me, looks like you might have it, but if not,
yeah,
I'll
can you?
it.
Okay, what are you guys seeing right now, if you don't mind telling me?
A desktop, maybe? A rainbow?
Okay, all right. And so you're seeing the whole thing though, the stuff on the side as well?
No.
You're seeing the mini slides on the side?
No.
No, just the presentation piece?
No, you're on your You can tell you're on Apple though.
Yes, and Apple for
Yeah,
some
so
reason.
you're on the desktop screen.
Okay. Forgive, I do this like 6 times a week, and for some reason today it does not want to cooperate. So let me just try a little trick here to, so I'm working with Keynote and I
There you
really
go.
don't like Keynote. Okay, so what are you guys seeing now? You're just seeing argument for culturally specific education, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you're not seeing anything else? You're not seeing my other slides?
No.
No.
You're on
Okay.
presentation mode.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. So let me, again, Jackie Butts, I'm the former homeownership program director at Portland Housing Center. I was there for about 6.5 years. And one of my main jobs, not only is helping clients attain homeownership through counseling and education, but I also facilitated our culturally specific financial education course, Getting Your House in Order. And what I want to share with you today is the argument for getting your house in order and why we should be teaching culturally specifically. Oh my God, nothing is working today. It's not okay. All right, you are seeing Because We Believe? Perfect. All right, thank you. I think we might be good now. All right. So the effectiveness of this course is going to bring us closer to achieving our goals and our mission. And the mission at Portland Housing Center and at Some Clarity is to empower people to live their best lives and to shift the paradigm of wealth and homeownership in the Black community, one household at a time. So culturally specific education works. It builds skills and confidence in a way that's personal and rooted in our cultural experience of the participants. When it's done right, it can have an impact on generations to come. So before I go deeper into the class, I just want to give you a little bit of the origin story. How did we come up with this class? So Portland Housing Center, at the time that we did the survey, has been in business for over 25 years. And what we came to realize was that our services and programs were not being effectively utilized by the very community it was dedicated to serve. And in 2009, they did a survey and realized that only 20% of those who attended a program orientation, which is, to find out about our services and use it, were African American, and less than half of them signed up for services. And in 2010, less than 5% of their African American clients became homeowners. So we really had to change something to get different results. And so what PHC did was we looked to create an African American advisory committee, and that committee helped us to market to and engage with the community. We looked at internal capacity building so that our staff had to reflect the community that we were serving, and we had to make our environment a warm and welcoming one. And so we also looked at utilizing research, our own and some external, and with that, we began to develop the course, Getting Your House in Order. Based upon our research, there were 3 basic barriers to homeownership that were identified by our participants: family experience, anticipated discrimination, and the lack of knowledge and experience. So when it comes to financial practices, building trust and knowledge is essential in our community, and we value respect, trust, safety, security, and a sense of belonging. And financial institutions did not build this trust. So African Americans use social networks to navigate financial systems. So with those identified barriers in mind, we created our course. And in 2010, we introduced Getting Your House in Order. It was a course created by African Americans, taught by African Americans to African Americans. We created a safe and authentic space for interaction. We build on the knowledge and experience of not just the facilitators, but of the people in the class as well, because everyone has knowledge and experience that they could share to better everyone else. We did skill building and confidence building. It was an active participating class. And then the class was 4 weeks. We expanded to 5 because we were finding that the conversations were getting deep and we wanted to give the participants space to have those conversations around money. So in 2015, we had 138 graduates in the 5 years period. It's also important to note that we had over 400 individuals participate in the course, but not everyone graduated. We expect attendance at every session and all homework has to be completed. And that's one of my golden rules that I enforce religiously. So our curriculum was designed to really address and ultimately aid in the breakdown of the identified barriers. So there are key elements of the course that help to make it a unique offering. We had a letter to money where participants explored their relationship to money and why they do the behaviors they do, basically triggering an internal conversation with themselves. We had active participation in group activities, weekly spend and tracking, homework, and then research and financial products. So just some of the things that was active participants. It really wasn't a sit down and take notes type of class. And so we wanted to have specific outcome when the course was completed. We really wanted to build financial resiliency for individuals. We wanted to empower them, and we eventually wanted them to go on to become successful homeowners. So we've always gotten feedback from participants, positive feedback, and we really felt comfortable that we were achieving the outcomes, but we needed to know for sure. And we were given an opportunity to participate in Project Impact, and that allowed us to verify our actual results and outcomes. So it was a moment of truth for us. We focused our research on these questions. After graduation, did our participant exhibit changes in financial behavior, increased confidence, and a sense of being in control? Our research method were the use of in-depth interviews for qualitative data and email service for quantitative data. In analyzing the data, these were the recurring themes that our participants highlighted, and I'll just touch on some of them, try to do it quickly. Enduring effects, positive financial changes in behavior, less stress around money, improved financial confidence, and just positive changes in their life. And in a broader sense, they found a foundation for intergenerational wealth building and a way of building community knowledge and skills. And so the first finding, getting your house in order, is a catalyst for positive financial behavior. Now, perhaps one of the most demanding tests of an educational program is whether participants change what they do, their behavior, as a result of being in the program. And to raise that bar further, the question is whether those changes go beyond the short-term shift in the wake of the course experience to become long-term, permanent changes embedded in the participants' day-to-day choices. 2/3 of the Getting Your House in Order graduates made changes in behavior, and the evidence shows that they were sticking with it 1 to 5 years after participating in the program. Overall, participants saw increased savings, decrease in debt, and improvements in their credit score. Furthermore, their words suggested that they did this not with a sense of loss or hardship, but with purpose, intention, and pride. And so I just want to look at some of these changes and share them with you. For the data, we compared their behavior 6 months before taking the course to their behaviors after completing the course. And as you can see, in terms of using a budget, before the class, only 5% used the budget always, and after was 32%. Before the course, 49% never used the budget, and after 0% never used the budget. Everyone started using a budget at least sometimes. So that was a significant shift. We also saw a difference in contribution to savings. Before, only 3% contributed to their savings on a regular basis or always, and that increased to 34%. And those that never contributed to savings, 17%, that was reduced to 3%. In maintaining an emergency fund, it increased from 7% to 49%, and it decreased from never of 41% to 2%. So we definitely saw significant changes in behavior around money management. Further evidence that money management skills improved is a decrease in the usage of high-cost predatory lending products. Before Getting Your House, 17% of the respondents reported using services of predatory lending products. After the course, that dropped to 14.6%. And the frequency of their use also declined in that group. 75% of the graduates that used the products before completing the class reported a decrease in the usage after the class, even in times of emergency. So again, positive behavior changes were taking effect. The second impact, it builds a personal, less stressful connection to money. For many participants, the general expectation was to take the course and come away with an understanding of how to read their credit reports and stay on track towards homeownership. Instead, they came away with a deeper understanding of their personal relationship with money and how their past experience impacted their current behavior. By critically examining their own relationship with money, participants were able to better understand how it was affecting them, and they created internal checks on their own spending and financial behaviors. This profound change reinforced the likelihood that they would adapt and stick with positive behaviors. As we can see, when it comes to their stress level with money, the stress level, a high stress level before, decreased from 61 to 22%. Those who felt somewhat stressed, it increased from 15% to 41%. And those who felt no stress went from 0 to 10. So again, overall, the stress level dropped for everyone who took the course. Doing things differently really requires confidence, and getting your house in order improves financial confidence. It builds confidence by providing on-hand experiences in a supportive environment with others who are also learning new skills. Participants didn't just learn about financial concepts. Instead, they tried out new tools, applied them to their own lives so that the learning is personal. They became comfortable using new skills and tools they've gained, and they can comfortably and purposefully ask questions if something was unclear. So as we're looking at effective money management, you can see that before the class, only 34% felt that they could effectively manage their finances, and that increased to 80% after. And only 27% felt comfortable in their financial knowledge and skills, and that increased to 80% as well. Confidence is transformative. Confidence allows our participants to take bold steps, the results of which may not be immediately measurable, but is highly anticipated. You could see by the quotes that confidence helps them to stand taller. It allows you to interact from a position of strength. So those are some of the quotes from our participants. There is also a sense of personal freedom and relief when you realize that financial well-being is not really based upon the income level, but on income management. And here you can see that having a sense of control over their finances increased from 24% to 68% after the class. And then feeling on track to meet their short and long-term goals increased from 22 to 66%. The fourth finding was paving the way to other changes. The new confidence and skills gained by some of our participants gave them a boost to pursue new venues for generating increased income, job security, or ways to protect their future through insurance and investing. Some course participants actually went back to graduate school, and in one case with an eye towards financial planning career, while others pursued small business development or focused on other ways to increase income and job security. Those who became homeowners were then interested in understanding how to protect their investments in their future and their future through insurance. So having come this far, our participants wanted to keep on going with building up their finances. And again, some of the quotes in their own words. The fifth finding is it lays a foundation for generational wealth building. By exploring the historical context of African-American homeownership, participants discovered that homeownership was not just about buying a house. Instead, it was about building something for future generations and having a legacy for your family. Participants spoke about the importance of homeownership to their family in the present moment and for future generations. They gave voice to long-term views. What they did now could and would affect their family for generations to come. They came to understand that a home is more than a stable roof over their head. It was also a financial asset that could be the building block of wealth creation. It can be transferred from one generation to the next. It had the potential to change the trajectory of families in the future. Getting your house in order engendered a new personal understanding of the power of intergenerational wealth and helped participants to see the link between their financial choices in the present and the financial resilience for generations of their families to come. And again, in their own words, some powerful examples of having that aha moment. The sixth finding was it helps to build community and knowledge and ability. After some of the graduates came to see personal wealth creation as being instrumental to building wealth and power in the African-American communities, many left with a feeling of responsibility to share that positive financial management skills that they learned so that others in their family and community can gain their knowledge. So here again, you can see from them where they're saying this is an each one teach one opportunity. From the second class that we did, into every class afterwards, we've had participants that were referred by someone who took the class earlier. We had a dad in one class and his daughter in the next. We had a child take the class, and the next offering, her mother and siblings were there. We've had aunts and uncles and friends come into the course because they were told, you need to know this. So knowledge is power, and when it's shared within our community, it empowers all of us. So what will be the long-term impacts on families and community as a result of this course? We really can't say for sure. However, if the current trends and impacts are any indication, our future looks promising. The course has definitely shown a permanent shift in our graduates, how they engage with their finances, greater financial resiliency, greater confidence and empowerment. They're pursuing their other life goals, and they have a sense of freedom, of personal freedom. And our graduates experience significant behavior and mind change and mind shifts, results of which can be far-reaching. There's also power in the ripple effect, the impact of positive change from generation to generation, moving from a mindset of saving to invest as opposed to saving to spend, moving from being renters to being homeowners, and thinking about how your personal financial behavior not only impacts your immediate family, but how it impacts the future generations. Thinking about not just me, but we. This is the future for the African-American community, can be financially strong and stable, and it begins with knowledge, and knowledge that really is delivered in a culturally specific manner. One of our graduates sums it up the best. I know now that it's one thing to have a vision, it's another thing to have a strategy to achieve that vision. And that's what participating in the class does. Getting your house in order provided tools, skills, and a nurturing environment to create that vision and the confidence to execute a strategy to achieve it. So where do we go from here? The goal is to expand the reach and scale of getting your house in order. During my time as a homeownership program director at PHC, I started that process, and there are currently 9 organizations that we've licensed and trained to offer that course. During COVID, I moved, and I was given the opportunity to acquire the rights to getting your house in order so that I can continue the work to bringing it on a national level and scaling it up. And that's what I'm doing now through my organization of Some Clarity. And so with that summary, I'm sorry, I kind of went fast. So I don't know how much time I'm given. But with that, I'll be happy to take any questions from anyone or hear any comments.
We surely appreciate you doing this presentation for us. Thank you so much. We got through the bugs in the beginning, and it was certainly worth it. So thank you. At this time, I would like to see if there are any public comments.
Okay.
The clerk.
Second. There we go. Any attendees wishing to provide public comment may indicate so now. We have no public comment at this time.
Okay, I'm going to stop my share so that you guys could get control back. Oh,
sounds good. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our members here and see if there are any questions, comments. I think I have one hand raised. Frank Robinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quick question was, well, I had 2. Of the 138 graduates, how many of them actually became homeowners? 1. And number 2, is your program also used to help people get HUD certified?
I'm going to ask some clarification on what do you mean used to get people HUD certified?
Yeah, so through the Department of Housing, a lot of folks get actually certified to whereby they can qualify for down payment assistance programs. They also get that kind of clarity around going through all the financial steps and everything else, because if they're going to get that grant money, they want to make sure that they've had that kind of level of education, which you presented. So I was wondering if there was that part of, was that in your program?
Yeah, so the program was born out of Portland Housing Center, which is a HUD certified organization. So the program does meet the financial standards of NeighborWorks America and HUD. And so all the organizations that are using it now are nonprofits and are HUD certified nonprofits. As to the number of homeowners, I don't have that number with me, but we did have quite a percentage of them attain home ownership. And again, a majority of those clients at the time of the survey were Portland Housing Center clients, so they were on their way to home ownership. One of the good things about the course is it's a course that whether or not you are going for home ownership or not, it's still a foundational basis for you to be able to manage your money so that that could even become a reality.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. If that's all from Frank, we'll go to Raquel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciated the presentation. I guess my question is about when you think about the kind of the way in which the program unfolded, are there things that you feel are critical, mission critical to having it be effective with a given community? Is it about having people who look like the community delivering the content? Is it I'm just trying to understand more about what are the things that you would consider essential key differentiators if someone was really thinking about how to kind of implement best practices from this.
Yes, it has to be given by someone from the community, so an African American person, and it could be Caribbean, so someone from an African American person. All the participants in the class are to be African American, and all of the partners in the class are African American. One of the things that we do with the class too is when we do it in person, we provide a meal, and we create an atmosphere of community around that. So we're eating first, and then we're going into conversation. So that's a big important piece because it brings down, we have to create a safe space to have honest discussions where we don't have to explain things. Okay, so that's a big one. And then some of the activities that we do, the letter to money is unique to this course. I know some people have adapted it once because I talk about it a lot. And then also the active assignments where you must go and analyze a checking account, analyze this. And so a lot of the activities we center around putting the principles into practice, and that makes the class stick more. So just the overall class itself, the environment that you create, the sense of trust that you create, that then opens people up to be able to talk honestly and shared cultural and norms and situations. And so we also really encourage participants to give their knowledge, because it's not just me who's teaching the class. We do it as a community. So it just creates an atmosphere of learning and acceptance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great question, Ms. Ewell. We're going to go to Stephen Russell now.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Butts, for that presentation. It's really impressive, and in particular with the outcomes that you measured, the metrics. Rarely are metrics so frankly emotional. And when you read these things and you understand people living with less anxiety in their lives, just how you bring that down to the real human level. And so I'm wondering if you would be able to comment on how you developed some of the metrics, or if there's other aspects of that were important to you, because I found them moving and informative both. And I just wonder where you modeled that from.
Yeah, so the research we did through Project Impact, so we created an interview with specific type of questions. It's kind of hard to do it. So the questions basically, it was an inside-outside question. Do you believe that you should budget, and are you actually budget, right? So to the level of knowing what to do and actually doing it and believing in it. So the questions, we asked different questions in different ways to really see whether the folks internalized what they learned. So that was one metric, to get all the qualitative data. How did you feel? What are your thoughts on this now? What are your goals? And then we did some quantitative analysis. Has your savings improved? What are the numbers to do that? And so by combining both of them, we were able to get a very good overview. But you are right, the qualitative stuff, the stuff that we get out of the interviews. And those are just some of the things that we pull, but it was probably the most rewarding and hardest 18 months that I worked, because when you really see the impact and how people are talking about the effect of that class, it just makes you work harder. So yes, the interviews were key in how we did, because we didn't want to steer. So we had to ask it in different ways to get this consistent answer. Hopefully that helped.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. So let's go to Daisy. Your hand is up.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Jackie, so much for coming to us across the time zones. I heard her speak at a national webinar about providing financial counseling with a racial lens. And as she has, and we've had a great conversation after that. It's about culture as much as race, certainly, as she has just said. I find this really exciting. Raquette, I loved your question. Getting to what are those essential pieces, and the way you phrased it was, no matter which group it is, because there is also the Latino group, I think it's Decide tu Futuro, right?
Decide tu Futuro, yes.
And so I have two questions, Jackie. One is presumably everything that you said in response to Raquette's question is, as she said, it's true for all the different groups, that there weren't changes that you saw, say, between these two excellent programs. And then bouncing on Frank's question, for the first-time homebuyer programs that we have, you're required to take a 8-hour class, and then you get this HUD certificate. Mm-hmm. And my sense is that your class is kind of a precursor to that, because I noticed that Portland Housing Center actually lists both separately, and that this is more literally getting your house in order so that you are ready to go out and look for a home. Is that correct?
That is correct. The financial education piece, we encourage all of our clients to take that. And then the way Portland Housing Center does it, we want you to take the financial education class sooner rather than later. What we have found is once a person takes the class, the conversation with their counselor becomes easier. Right? They understand what the goal is in the planning. And yes, this is why I have to budget. And in the class, when I teach it, I told my counselors, my goal is to be the bad guy and slash their dreams of, champagne house on a bare budget. And then my counselors build them back up, and together they work on it. So we have that class that hopefully they take, and that helps them through the counseling period. And then once they're close to home ownership, then we do the Home Buying 101 class, which is that 8-hour class in Oregon to prepare them for home ownership, where they, this is what the realtor does, this is what the lender does, inspector, and so forth. So it's 2 separate classes.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Let's go to T. Elder.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I want to first say, thank you so much, because for the work that you're doing. I wish that you can do some more of that work all throughout interstate wide. So my question.
That's my focus, right?
So my question is, I know that you have your first groups or cohorts. I'm just wondering, are you is there any plans to look at them longitudinally, like over a span of 3 to 5 years, just to see where they are? If they've continued with the lessons that they've learned, has it been reinforced? And then also, second question is, are you also working with any other nonprofits, for those students or your clients that need a little higher touch in terms of the financial education and counseling?
So for the longitudinal study, I would love to do that. The impact study, though, it literally does take you 18 months and then to go through it, and then a couple months to assemble the information. So that is something that I would like to do once I could hire someone to do it for me. It is very labor intensive. But what we are doing in the meantime is we are doing the surveys, the pre and post survey. How did you feel before the class? How are you feeling after the class? So we can at least gauge that we're still getting the same types of results. We're just not verifying those results. As the other organizations teach the course, they will be required to send me their survey results so that we can see that there's consistency throughout. And at some point, my hope is I'll be able to say, this is what's going on in Rhode Island, this is what's going on in Florida, this is what's going on, and here's a total overall picture. So I come from a very data-driven organization. And so what I'm doing now is trying to mirror some clarity to be able to gather and produce that same type of data. And I'm sorry, what was the second question about the class?
Oh, if you're collaborating with any nonprofits locally, or in your local area, for the clients that need a little more in-depth technical assistance around the financial coaching or counseling.
So the way that the program works is that if a shop wants to offer the class, then I really look that they're already doing that counseling piece, and that it's an additional service that they could offer to supplement what they have. And then they will be able to continue that counseling itself. I don't personally counsel. I am HUD certified, but I don't personally counsel. That's why it's important that the organization that takes on the course is equipped to work with that client throughout that process. I will tell you that there is an organization that I'm working with where we are looking to develop some post-class or some post-workshops, because once we, plant that seed, then they want more information on investing more, and they want us to go deeper. One of the fortunate things is I'm a licensed loan officer, life and health insurance agent, and I had my securities license. So I'm able to answer some of those questions, but I'm trying to now create some workshops where they could go in and go deeper into specific topics. So that is in the works.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Ali Tarzi, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, Jackie. Appreciate the presentation. I'm sort of putting my funder hat on here and had a programmatic question for you because oftentimes from a funder's perspective, we're tying programmatic outcomes and for our nonprofit partners to these arbitrary 12-month sort of commitments, often tied to our own budget cycles. And if I understood correctly, your program results and outcomes were over an 18-month period. If I understood that piece correctly, maybe if you could clarify that, and if you see that a year and a half is sort of key, like to extend that beyond a year and a half, or 2 years, a longer outlook to get to the qualitative and quantitative metrics that you did.
Okay, so the 18 months was the actual length of time it took us to do the impact study, because it's very detailed. And at that time, we were looking 5 years backwards, right? So what you want to have is you want to have some time or a couple of years where you have enough people going through it that when you do a study, you could see where they are. You're going to get positive changes right away. The key is it sticking? And so you need to give that shop time to have enough people graduate and take the class to look at the impact.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that.
Yes, and as a funder, since I'm no longer, I could say, as a funder, my thing is it would be really great if when you fund, you give the shop that 3 to 5 year period to be able to get results and to be able to have the funds to continue the course for that time. This is not a short-term type thing, at least for impact results.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, again, Jackie, I want to thank you on behalf of the task force for being here and presenting to us. I'm sure we'll have additional follow-up as you move forward with educating the people. So with that, I will go ahead and move on to our item number 8. And I'm looking forward to this one as well. It's another info item on displacement and private equity purchases of rental housing. So we have our very distinguished affordable housing advocates who are with us on the task force in Ricardo Flores and Stephen Russell, and they are going to be presenting on this today. So I think we're going to start with Ricardo. So take it away, sir. You're muted.
Oh, there we go. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, everybody. So really just kind of wanted to start off with a little bit of it, kind of in a conversation sense that, I think the issue here was that we'd seen the Prebys Foundation sell a bunch of housing to BlackRock, and really what could have been done about that, right? How could that have been a little bit differently than just sort of selling off all these units and kind of hoping for the best? And so a couple things that I know of that to discuss about is, I think with that particular instance, and Steve, you can chime in as well, is if somebody like that wants to sell, the question becomes, how do you match that offer? How do you cobble together funding in order to match that seller and to really allow for them to not sell those units? And so that becomes one of the big issues and we've seen this too, I think, with projects that age out of their HUD covenants. Many of you probably know their HUD used to do mortgages like homes. And a lot of these projects now age out after 30 years of service to the community there. But the back end of it, people are being kicked out, houses are being renovated, and they're being flipped, or I'm not flipped, but they're being provided back to the market. And so again, the question comes down to, for that property owner, can a group of individuals, nonprofits, government, others cobble together funding in order to buy that off that person? And it's no different really than what I think the Housing Commission has been doing as well, somewhat with hotels and other properties around the city. How are you able to deal with that? But short of some other opportunities, there are programs in place. DC has one called the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, which is really kind of fascinating. It allows tenants in projects that they live in to actually go out and obtain information. They get the first right of refusal, and they can get information on how they could purchase their building. There are groups that have been created. I think LIST can provide capital for that, to how they purchase that. And then there's a whole piece of it as well in which people are given the opportunity to learn how that's happened. And in fact, one of my former colleagues that many of you know, Kwafi, that's sort of how he started. It was in Washington, DC, basically going into these buildings and informing residents that, hey, there's this law and you guys have the first right of refusal, and no, it's not crazy. You actually could buy it, but these are some of the challenges and some of the opportunities to do that. So I think that's one of them. Nancy Skinner at the state level, the senator from Northern California, has been really integral in a lot of this discussion. I know she had a bill this past year that addressed some of corporate buying in some of our neighborhoods. And then also I want to say that it's a bill called SB 8. And I think what it does is it re-solidifies another bill called SB 330, which I believe allowed for tenant protections because of COVID. So it stretches it out, I think, for 5 years or something. Again, because we know there's so much money that the state has for individuals who are going through rental challenges due to COVID. And on top of that, there's some tenant protections that don't allow for the destruction of buildings in which tenants are there. So there is some movement on a lot of these things. I think what's happened, and I was on a call this morning with the group called YIMBY Lawyers, is that so much of this has been literally this past year, even maybe up until the last 2 years. And we really don't know what the picture looks like for some of these bills. Some of them are actually going in real time, meaning that they're passed. And now, as we all know, government now, the bureaucracy has to take that, make sense of that, understand how to enforce those things. And that's kind of where some of those processes are in place. And then the last thing I'll say, and before my colleague Steve speaks, is when we talk about displacement, it's not a popular thing, but rent control is really the easiest displacement mechanism that we can see. For many of you that have followed the Berkeley Haas Institute, they came out with a report prior to COVID, I think 2017. And it's interesting because the tenor of the report was not pro rent control, but it was an acknowledgement that the rental market doesn't work. And the reason why we know it doesn't work is because of the amount of homeless men and women on our streets who actually, to many of on this call, understand, have cash flow, right? They actually have money to spend. They just don't have enough because the supply is so little. And so that they've strongly urged the state and others to really look at that, because we're not going to be able to build, I think, was it 80,000 units we need, like yesterday? We're not going to be able to build that quickly. Many of my colleagues who are bankers on this call know there's a lot of money out there, but you can't just start building, right? It takes time. It takes entrepreneurship. It takes risk, people willing to risk that money. So short of that, how does something like rent control come into place? And the last thing I'll say is that there was rent control, a form of rent control passed at the state, but I believe it's like 5% plus inflation or plus CPI. So you're getting at 7-8%. And for if we remember, when people are paying rent, it's compounding, right? So it's X number, 8% more the next year, and then that new number, X plus the last year, 8% more. And so it just keeps going further and further out of reach. And, you know, we've seen during COVID, if you're in the market for a home or if you watch home prices, what happens in real time when supply dwindles, housing prices really just escalate. And now many of us are seeing communities where homes were going for $1 million something and maybe 2 years ago are now in like the $2 million range. I mean, it's just incredible because of supply. So Stephen, any thoughts or any comments?
Yeah, a few here. Thank you, Ricardo, because you've laid out some really good groundwork for some of the research that I've done, and more informally, I'll say it's not a written research. It's been in the aftermath of the Blackstone purchase. We're very concerned about, like, here's 6,000 units that are at great risk of transferring from naturally occurring affordable to upper market rate. And that is accelerating a trend. And I would encourage folks, if you haven't recently revisited, I'm sure everybody's read, but you should revisit the preservation study done by the Housing Commission in May of 2020, just because it is such a data resource for all of these questions and lays down some fundamental work. I'm going to rely a little bit on that. There's a McKinsey study from February of this year that I'll reference. And then I've had a lot of conversations with fellow board members from Cal HFA about their concerns, because they see it from different places. Like Michael Gunning from the Cal BIA has a very different idea of, than say the head of the Housing Authority from Santa Clara. You can imagine some of their ideas differ. But I think the most important thing to think about is, first of all, the scale of what we're talking about. I mean, we've lost 2/3 of the naturally occurring affordable housing in the city of San Diego, per the Commission's study. That's about 60,000 units. So given that for the 6,000 units, we would have had to have purchased $1.5 billion to protect those 60,000, we would have needed 60 billion. Do the math for, I'm an architect, not a mathematician. 60,000 units, so 10 times, right? So we would have needed 10.5, 15 billion. $15 billion to preserve the housing that was lost to NOAA. And we don't have anything like those resources available to us. And never do math on the fly, by the way. You always have it written down. It's my advice. So the scale is huge. The rate of loss is very high. And it's important to note that when we look at total units in the city right now, there's about 140,000 market rate units, only 23,000 deed restricted. That's city, not region, but city of San Diego. And so preservation fund, we have to scale things up if we're really going to be successful in diverting it. And it's going to take multiple strategies. Like so many other things, there's no silver bullet. There is a series of actions we have to take. Clearly, a preservation fund is one of the things that the preservation study calls for acquisition and rehab and pre-development. But again, I just laid out some of the scalar elements of that. That's huge. But there also need to be incentives for NOAA owners to stay in the business in exchange for maybe giving some incentives. And a theme that runs through a lot of literature here is that when you talk about the folks who are selling, we don't often focus on the sellers. We often focus on the buyers. The sellers are often themselves community members who have invested in this real estate as a form of intergenerational wealth. So not all of them, but the smaller ones in particular, the 6, 8, 9 unit apartments, or even fewer. And they are often incentivized to sell because of deferred maintenance. They've kept their rents low, and so they have deferred maintenance issues. And so in some ways, we might look at ways of providing nominal subsidies to existing owners to stay in the business with some rent restrictions, as opposed to looking at taking it out institutionally and trying to compete with the Blackstones of the world. Another strategy was suggested in a lot of the literature, including the Housing Commission, is more significant relocation assistance requirements for the tenants who are displaced by this kind of activity. And I will point out with the TOPA, the Tenant Opportunity Purchase Act, as was applied in DC. And I had this long conversation with Kwafi about this, and he said, what happens is noticing is required. When someone's going to sell the property, you have to provide sufficient notice. Tenants are given 45 to 90 days to organize a tenants association and come up with an offer, which is extraordinarily challenging. You can imagine with a lot of capital in the bank, it's hard to move it that quickly and come up with a deal. But the way he described it, it didn't often end up with the tenants actually buying those units. But what it did is allowed them to leverage significantly larger relocation payments. It in many cases allowed those tenants to go out and purchase homes of their choice. So simply by empowering them through the Tenant Opportunity Purchase Act, they created a tenants association, in exchange for not actually following through with that transaction, they were often paid significantly greater amounts of money that they could turn on. And what that does, it starts to balance the market out, where, you know, what's happening, of course, is that the value of an asset, there's a differential, this delta. And when the delta is great, there's an incentive to sell to get the greater value. By having these larger relocation benefits, you're actually lowering the potential market value for resale and inhibiting the actual transactions. And when they do take place, some of the benefits accrue to the existing tenants who frankly have been paying the mortgage all these years, right? I would say, you know, the McKinsey study from February 2010 is one I highly recommend. It's brief. But what they really point out is that NOAA renters are predominantly low income and people of color. They did an in-depth study of Los Angeles for some of these findings, so some are applicable, not exactly the same as San Diego, but very applicable. That NOAA is a key source of wealth for many low-income communities, and that when you lose NOAA, if housing transfers to ownership of outside corporations, you lose local wealth, you lose local control, you lose local interests. And that NOAA assets in the hands of local community members are actually financially fragile and more sensitive to economic impacts than the larger portfolio owners. And so again, this points to the issue of maybe some of our focus needs to be actually on the owners, the mom and pops who own these apartment buildings. There's solutions that are suggested in a lot of the literature as well. Rental assistance for, you know, we're seeing a huge wave of rental assistance right now, but it's temporal, right? It's very much limited to the current crisis we're in, but we should be looking at other ways of stabilizing the rental income of some of these smaller owners by propping up the renters themselves. I would say that if you saw the study that came out from Serving Seniors this year, where they talk about a $300 increment of a shallow subsidy for these seniors could be the difference between homelessness and staying housed. Think what it means also to then the property owner who can maintain a steady rental base, and that extra income could actually mean that they could do the maintenance, upkeep, and value saving that property. And I've got like a few more things here I want to talk about. Owner interventions, stabilizing at risk NOAA properties by helping the owners. There's proposals to possibly give incentive programs to do the upgrade, the maintenance. So because that's often incentive. It's a liability at some point for these owners of small properties. If they've kept their rents low, they've often deferred a lot of maintenance, and they are often selling to avoid having to deal with this large capital outflow. And so programs that maybe provide them with some of these upgrades, this rehab, without having to force them to sell, but getting, you know, promises or commitments of deed restrictions on some of these rents could be valuable. Obviously, you know, for the direct financing and purchase opportunity, creating a fund is a big deal. I mean, I think we need to have an action fund to do this. Players could include some foundations, and I've had conversations in the wake of Blackstone with several philanthropic organizations that are interested in funding something like that. But you still need an entity poised and ready with expertise to actually act on these, either to underwrite the deployment of the capital or to actually be the buyer or purchaser. So it's not just creating a pool of money. You need an entity who has sufficient expertise in the real estate market to make these transactions happen. And historically, when we look at NOAA, it has been with larger, when we look at preservation efforts, it tends to be on larger 50-plus unit entities. And if we can go with small, if we can acknowledge in areas, my community in Mid-City, in other parts of the city, there's a lot of 6, 7, 8, 9 unit properties. And those are the ones who might be really most at risk. There also could be the possibility of taking tax abatement programs in exchange for maintaining affordability, something that can be explored both locally and with the state. How can we increase the visibility of these NOAA opportunities? They so often come to the market without any notice, and that a lot of the interested parties who would have otherwise thought to step up don't even have notice of that opportunity. And so is it a registry of some kind? Is there, you know, there's mechanisms the state could enact that would force the disclosure of these sales in the opportunity phase, not ex post facto. And that plays better if you have the investment fund available, the funds are set aside, and you have a mechanism that forces disclosure of a potential sale, then you actually have the chance to match the resource and the opportunity. And then, you know, Ricardo talked about rent control, which absolutely, you know, plays a role of suppressing the value, the potential market value of apartments on the resale market. If we can talk, you know, cold stark economics here. But a step toward that could be a rental registry, because a lot of what we're doing, we do one-time studies. We don't know what any given unit is renting for right now. We can look at a variety of sources that can characterize that for us, but we're dealing in the we're kind of blindly in the dark with a lot of this. And so I think one of the first fundamental steps we could take is requiring rental registries in cities so that we would know what we're actually dealing with. That's a really quick flyover of things that we've been talking about that I've been researching, and I appreciate the opportunity to share that research. And Ricardo and I are here to answer or raise more questions than we already have.
Okay, thank you very, very much. I want to make sure that I'm checking in with public comment before we open this up to the members.
Certainly. Any attendees wishing to provide public comment may indicate so now. There is no public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. And so I see Peter has raised his hand, so let's start with you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate Steve and Ricardo bringing this, to this meeting, because certainly I remember the discussion, when the Preby's Foundation decided to sell those units, and it was, that is an extreme case. Obviously, that was a case, and we're well-minded folks at the Housing Federation and others. It was. We didn't have any opportunity to really respond in a timely way to address that sale. And we know that on a smaller basis that is happening, on a daily, a monthly basis in Mid-City and other communities in San Diego County. And I guess what I would say is that this is not, oftentimes in public policy, we think, we have these overwhelming issues, like that we can't solve. We know that we can solve this problem. Wakeland partnered with City Heights CDC, and we own a 130 unit portfolio of what were formerly, at risk, naturally occurring affordable units. And we used our affordable housing finance techniques to rehab them, refinance them, and they're under a long-term regulatory agreement. So we know how to do it. We also, Wakeland, I'm working with a smaller nonprofit that had purchased a 21 unit building in City Heights on 43rd Street. And, it is not a cookie cutter type project, but we are working to preserve those 21 units. And we've acquired an adjacent site, and we're looking to do kind of an acquisition rehab new construction project of, approximately 60 units. And we're going to make it happen. And so I guess I would like just to say that, this is not something that we, it's not rocket science. We know how to do it. Wakeland, don't get me wrong, it's a labor of love. I have a lot of gray hairs from that 10 property transaction in City Heights. But now it's deed restricted. It's very well rehabbed. It's under very competent management for, in really perpetuity. And, we intend to do that on this other property in City Heights as well. So we can do it. I think we just need more resources. We need a little bit more policy focus. And we can do it. And we know, affordable housing advocates, local government in the Bay Area, Los Angeles, other places around the country are making a significant commitment to stem the tide, so to speak. I think, we need resources. We need leadership.
Well, I would add that the regulatory framework in some instances is necessary to force the tools to work. And, so it's really the resource and the regulatory framework that puts those resources into play.
Yep, agreed. Ricardo, I just have a quick question. You mentioned Nancy Skinner, and I just wanted to If you could go over again what she is working on right now around this issue.
Yeah, let me find it real quick here. But I just found so she passed the law. Oh, that wrong one. She passed the law recently. I think it's SB 8. And I think SB 8, what it does is it allows for the period of when folks can, not be displaced, like tenants. I think it increases that, but it also provides some sort of provision in there that allows for tenants to stay in properties that are being potentially rehabbed or changed or whatnot. The other thing she did too is she actually, there was a bill that she created called SB 1079 to stop corporate speculators from snatching up distressed properties in the aftermath of pandemic by giving would-be owner occupants priority in purchasing the dwellings. So that's something else that she's worked on. I think, if it may behoove us, if we want to talk more about this, maybe to get a member of her team to say, hey, let me explain to you what we're doing and how we're doing it. I will say that I was on a call with the California YIMBY law group today, or not a call, but like a little Twitter conversation panel kind of discussion. And it was really interesting to hear all of these laws that have been put in place or continuing to be put in place, and how the framing was that they're getting the state slowly but surely to look at some of the issues we're addressing here and giving the tools to these departments to do that work. And so what looks maybe from San Diego looks like another housing bill and another housing bill and another housing bill, and this is really kind of a strategic goal of trying to get the state's bureaucracies to say, wait a minute, you can't do this anymore, and you can't do this anymore now because we've passed these laws. So somebody like her who's kind of highlighted in this conversation may be interesting, because just to find out what have you done, why are you doing it, and why you, not others, and how do these pieces kind of all fit together for localities to really think about and give us options. And my guess too, as you know, council member, they're always interested to understand how their laws are being considered or taken up by local areas and local communities, right?
Yep. And that's why I asked the question. There's a lot that we can do, as a municipality, but they're also just understanding the sort of the spirit of the law, I guess, when these things are passed, how they fit together. It's so important. And in the past, there's been more of a disconnect, but I feel like now, not as much. Certainly, we have, a lot of regional collaboration, and then we have statewide collaboration in a way that I think, San Diego has shied away from in the past. So I'm happy to be in this moment, and just making sure that we make the best out of what the state legislature is doing on an implementation level, because that's what we have to do. And that's not always what we see in pressers or, that kind of thing, but that is kind of what our, including creating policy and going further if we need to. We certainly need to be implementing the things that are, being passed at the state. So let me go to Ali next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So on the point of implementation, I just wanted to make a comment on SB 1079. Ricardo, thanks for bringing that up. So I think to your point, just to recap it, right, you have part of SB 1079 prevents the trustee from bundling property. So in effect, it prevents an investment firm, an equity group, from coming in and buying in bulk off the market. And then you have a right of first refusal to a tenant buyer or a 501c3, a nonprofit entity, right? And so not in San Diego, I would say in broader Southern California, there is the Office of Control of Currency, the OCC, has a working group, LA Reach, that sort of honed in on this. And in the implementation conversation, one of the challenges has been that although the nonprofit sector has a right of first refusal, they're often not capitalized to come in and bid competitively on the properties. And so the conversation quickly veered to, we need a fund. It's steered toward not necessarily a grant fund, but a patient capital fund. Some groups do. I think, they're coming from an informed place, like it's sort of like a 2% long-term rate on a fund that would allow them to then go to market be competitive. And so just want to make a comment because that conversation in some municipalities has progressed a bit.
Got it. Thank you for that. Definitely. T.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is all really interesting, especially considering, we're so close to Los Angeles and what's happening up in Los Angeles as well. And so, there are some nonprofit developers and CDFIs that I'm working with up in Los Angeles who have encountered some other issues besides just the capital is around the ADA. Mm-hmm. So they're having some issues, especially if they're looking at the small multifamily housing units from 50 to under 50. I mean, from 5 units to under 50. And so because of the ADA compliance or zoning or whatever, that they're not able to get the capital for that, because the value, the cost to make those adjustments, the property is undervalued. So they're having some issues there. So, that's something, to take a look at as you guys are getting further into your research. And then also, it might be a good idea to connect with some groups that I'd be happy to connect you with that I'm working with in Los Angeles.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're doing good on time. We're going to go to our last item. And so last month, San Diego was one of 25 regions invited to apply to Wells Fargo Wealth Opportunity Restored through home ownership, BIPOC Home Ownership Initiative grants. Thanks to a regional collaboration, including LISC, the Housing Federation, Habitat for Humanity, NAREB and NAHREP, Urban League and the RTF co-chairs, and other RTF members, that would be us, an application was submitted. The grant calls to reduce the local racial homeownership gap by creating a plan to homeowners that are Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So we're gonna jumpstart this conversation with Antonio Barbosa, Wells Fargo rep. Please proceed.
Well, I just want to say that I just want to congratulate Daisy for her leadership. She ended up putting a really strong application. I don't want to play kind of a conflict of interest, but I was able to kind of provide some feedback because obviously I want to bring that money to San Diego. 7.5 will be really good to bring to the region. It's going to be very competitive. It's only 8 at the end are going to be selected nationwide, but I'm confident that we have a really strong application. We have the talent, we have the organization that have already proven that they can make this happen. So hopefully we will hear something positive soon. The first phase is getting $150,000 to put together the plan. And so we are waiting for that phase to finish and to get the news if we're going to move to the second phase, which is the 7.5. I don't know, Daisy, if you want to add any additional information.
Thank you, and you're very kind to deflect to me because, in fact, as he said, we were one of only 25 geographies across the country that were invited to apply to this grant. So our odds are better than the other efforts that we have used to pursue this funding. And this came about because of those efforts. Antonio has really been working tirelessly, particularly going back a couple of years, conversations that he and I had again and again about financial counseling and how do we rebuild the infrastructure and strengthen it. And he's been able to secure grants for that and for homeownership preparation. And then moving to when the co-chairs started researching and proposing a revolving pooled loan fund that could be used to expand down payment assistance so we can help everybody who is ready for it, because right now it's too popular, it sells out so quickly. And so thank you, Antonio, for continuing to try and promote these things to working to support me and us as we've put in one application after another. I feel better about this one. Like I said, the odds are better than other ones that we've done before. If you mentioned the timeline, this one is for a $150,000 grant to create a comprehensive plan, basically an actionable, implementable plan to increase homeownership for Black, Indigenous, and people of color populations. If we get it, we're expecting that we would know by October 1st, because that's when it was supposed to start. But it was a super compressed timeline, and we had like three weeks to put together the coalition, which all of you really helped with, and hat tip to Ricardo and to Sierra for pulling together the first collaboration meeting as well. Thank you. So we started the dialogue. The applications went in at the end of August, so we should hear any time to prepare the plan. The plan timeline would be October 1st to March 31st. And at that point, everybody who has completed a plan could apply for funding to implement it. And so, like I said, it's a super specific plan. It's an interesting opportunity because we know what works. We don't need to go out and like do original research. There are some great national plans. NAREB has 100, 200 page, the State of Black Housing plan. There's a new one, 3 by 30, 3 million. By 2030. And so for me, as I look at what would a plan look like, it's what specifically do we need to know? We already know the general things that need to be done, information, connecting people to resources, expanding down payment assistance, helping people raise their credit score. But let's get more specific and get all the data about, well, so what are credit scores locally? Let's look at the HMDA data for denials. Let's look at, HMDA has census tract, and there's geo-targeting, geographical tags so that we can know where people are, so that instead of saying, hey, we're just going to, generally look for this population and try and get the word out to them, we can access consumer data that says, no, this is specifically where they are. These are the neighborhoods. These are the types of occupations. This is where they hang out. So as you can see, it's an exciting opportunity. And part of the question today, I'll, defer to Madam Chair, but we had talked about, is there some piece of this, yes, that we would want to do even if we don't get the grant? And certainly I have some ideas about that. I think also given the compressed timeline and the way that we want to center the community's voice, how then do you balance technical implementation and, these are the national best practices, but making sure that it is locally centered and informed, and what that kind of, consultant dialogue process would look like. But Madam Chair, your item.
Oh, thank you, Daisy. I was going to ask any additional partners if you had anything else to say about the process or about the endeavor before we go to public comment. I'm sorry, Antonio, your hand is up again. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention that the goal is to create 5,000 new BIPOC homeownerships, which is kind of the challenge, because as we have been discussing today, if we have enough housing in the region, so that's kind of the challenge, and also something that we need to have a kind of a bigger voice in terms of making a case that San Diego is not just La Jolla, Coronado, Rancho Santa Fe. It's so difficult to make a case nationwide or even statewide that there is a need in the region. So obviously we want to promote tourism and big companies coming to San Diego, but kind of we always also forget of that part, that then it makes it difficult to compete for these grants because everybody thinks that San Diego is great and there is no need. So.
Well, if you ever need additional assistance to convince folks of that, call me.
Okay, will do.
Yes, for sure, because absolutely right. And telling the full story of San Diego, again, as we are more collaborative with our partners around the state, I think this will be an easier thing for us to do. But we sort of have been put in a box, so to speak, and I think we have a lot of offer in addition to what has been marketed as traditional San Diego. And so I'm definitely down to have that conversation anytime. We have the numbers to back it up, and we have a lot of people that have contributed to what San Diego is. And so, to tell that story it should be, I know it's something that we all strive to do. Any other part of the presentation, any other feedback about the process? I just want to make sure that we get the presentation part over so I can ask for public comment. Okay, so let's move to public comment and we'll come back for discussion.
Attendees wishing to provide public comment may indicate so now. There is no public comment at this time.
Thank you. I don't see any hands raised on my end. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much for continuing to be engaged in this process. I know you all do a lot of work daily to bridge those divides that we are talking about. And so I appreciate you, and I will see you at our next meeting, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. And thank you, Daisy.
Thank you.